Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm not going solo. The full band is in the house. We've got Lawrence Connolly, Liam Carrigan, and a big welcome back. Loads of folk have been asking where Kevin Graham is. Here you are, Kevin. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. Thank you, everybody, for missing me.
Obviously,
that doesn't say much for the other contributors at Folk. They're actually missing my useless opinions, but...
Right, so are you like, remember Derek Riordan couldn't get a game under Strachan and everybody was pining for him to play? Was it a similar kind of scenario, Kev? Or more Bobo Baldi under Strachan?
The more I didn't appear on the podcast, the more fondly I'm remembered and the better that I actually get.
All right, okay. Stop putting yourself down. Stop putting yourself down. Okay, loads to discuss. Yesterday was like a 1 hour monologue, and I was just saying there that you need about 3 gallons of juice to get through a 1 hour show on your own. I only had one wee sip of water, I think. But here we are. I've got backup. This is your back four. Will Celtic have a back four at the weekend? And we're going to start off with that. I'm going to start with yourself, Liam. You know, there are concerns. There are concerns going into the game this weekend. But what I was trying to kind of cover yesterday is these are a wee bit more deep-rooted than, you know, just even since Brendan came in. These issues have been long-standing issues at Celtic, haven't they?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances in terms of injuries, but that is why you need squad depth. You know, we sold one of our first-team players, and then 2 or 3 of them get injured, and suddenly we're down a hole. And really, we shouldn't be getting into that kind of situation. You know, things have kind of gone a full 180 since I was last talking about this, because I said, you know, that I thought the team would click within a game or two, and I thought that, you know, the team we're playing on Sunday were not that great. Going the other way, they seem to have stepped their game up the last couple of games, and we seem to be further away from where we were a couple of weeks ago. So it is concerning. But there's something about these games. We always seem to find a way to get the job done. And I still think we will get the job done. I don't think it will be a 3 or 4-0 of old, but I do think we will get the job done.
You know, you're talking about, you know, games back in the day, and you know, I remember a lot of them, Liam, where the chips were down and you were able to find something in the tank. There's so many facets to this, Lawrence. You know, I was talking yesterday about form. Let's start with form, right? We've not hit top form under Brendan Rodgers, but the point I was making yesterday is we've just not hit top form pre-Rodgers. There's an argument to suggest, you know, Alan Morrison was saying that Aberdeen in February, I had a few comments coming in saying, no, you know, Hearts, the cup game, we played really well against Hearts in the cup. That's probably the last time we played a 90 minutes game of football where we were satisfied with the performance, Lawrence. I know 45 minutes or maybe even 40 minutes against Killie at Rugby Park last season. But this isn't something that's just happened since Brendan's came in. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, no, definitely. The team appeared to lose focus, shall we say. Yeah, perhaps they were a bit annoyed with the manager having chats with James Maddison rather than focusing on Celtic. Who knows? You know, football's a small world. I'm pretty sure they would have heard some whispers. But look, we've not hit top form under Brendan, but the defence is getting stronger with Alistair Johnson coming back in. We're still top of the league. You know, we're still top of the league, despite what you read in the Scottish papers, how it's all disaster for Celtic. Yeah, you know, we'd all expected us to be a bit more proactive in getting first team starters in. I think that's the problem. It's all project signings again. You've lost Jota and Starfelt, 2 of the first names in the team sheet, and we've replaced them with projects. Coupled with our injuries, losing Hatate, Carter Vickers, and Moyes retired. You know, there's 5 people that could say we're first team starters. And have we replaced them with a first team starter? Any of them? Probably not.
Well, yesterday I was talking about that, Lawrence. I was talking to myself, but also to the lovely audience who tuned in. And we had a good, 1,200, 1,300 live on the show, which is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that blows me away. There's some big channels out there on YouTube who have got like 1 million subscribers who don't get that on live shows. So thanks every single one of you for getting involved. I know that there's a lot of concern in the Celtic fan base at the moment, and sometimes the best thing to do is to get on and vent online and vent in amongst each other and listen to each other's comments on it. And often what happens is things will get said on the show or even in the comments, and it makes you kind of change your view a little bit. But what you're talking about there, Lawrence, and we've been told not to use the word project signing, but I'm struggling to find another term for it. Basically, a player who you don't expect to walk right into the first team. Celtic sign a lot. I don't think we should be in a situation where we have to sign so many players within that age bracket, 20 to 23. I think we should be producing those players ourselves, but we're not. So we sign a lot of that type of player in the bracket. In terms of the fee, is normally between £1.5 to £2.5 million, Kev. So when you look at the 6 signings that have come in, at least 4 of them probably fall into that bracket. Lawrence spoke about Johnson coming back being a positive, which it absolutely is. Now, I'm going to start with that then. We're going to start with Johnson coming back. Not only has he come back, Kev, but he's come back into a side, as far as I could see, as far as I observed at the weekend, who had reverted back to inverted fullbacks, Kevin. Did you see that when you were watching Johnston and Taylor at the weekend? And how do you think it improved their performance?
I can't really say that. I was at the game and I wasn't impressed, truthfully. It's the first time I've seen Brendan Rodgers version 2.0 in the flesh this season. I must admit I wasn't impressed. I didn't really see the inverted fullbacks getting played. If it did, it confused matters even more, and the team didn't have a clue what they were actually trying to do. That's the worst thing for me. There's a lack of identity in the actual team at the moment, but that's understandable. It is really understandable because you've got guys there who had a manager who got them training in a certain way, playing in a certain way, and they fought and made them think they were gallus. Now you've got a guy that comes in and goes, I like the way that boy played, but we need to slightly change it. So these guys didn't think they're gallus anymore, and now they're struggling, and they're wondering where these new faces coming in. They're wondering if they've actually going to have a place in the team. You look at Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor's been rotten since I'm one of Taylor's biggest fans, and he's been rotten since the start of the season. It was nice to see Johnson back. I was one of them who didn't want to rush him back because I think every mother's been smashed in Celtic Park and we've had 7 years worth of injuries in 7 weeks. So I didn't want to rush Alistair Johnston back because, let's face it, Sunday's not a title decider, is it? There's going to be how many games is left after that. So it's not a big game. It's not a... Right, it is a big game, but it's not a big game if you get what I mean. There's still plenty of football to get played after it. Then you replaced him with Ralston, and Ralston gave me one of the funniest moments I think I've ever seen at Celtic Park towards the end of the game when he let the ball run out for a shy, went and took the shy, then threw it out for a by kick. I couldn't. I mean, it was that poor I had to laugh. It was really, really poor I had to laugh. We haven't clicked. That's the problem. We haven't clicked. But when you look at the reasons that we haven't clicked, they're there. But I think I can only talk for me. I over-expected. I wanted a smooth transition, and that's not happened. We're now at year 0. We're now at a rebuild. And when we were in April last year, that didn't look like the case. It looked like we were just going to get tweaked. But new manager comes in, it's a rebuild. And everything's swung. Everything's up in there. Fair going that we're so far in front of our domestic rivals, they've now got a puncher's chance. They have. But just because we're in the middle of this rebuild. And always, these project signings, I hate the term project signings. These guys could turn good. They've never trained under Ange Postecoglou. They only know the gospel according to Brendan. So they might be first team players in the next couple of weeks. You never know.
And there's 6 of them. There's 6 of them. So that's a core group of players, Kev. I totally get that. You've also got players who knew Brendan from the first time round. How many? Not a great deal, maybe 4. Before you know it, you've then got 10 players. There's going to be more players coming in this week. some say as many as 5. And then before you know it, you've got 15 players as part of the squad who are indoctrinated into the way that Brendan wants to play, train, his philosophy on football. And then what then happens is anybody whose feathers have been ruffled become part of a minority, and then you're able to put in your own culture, your own philosophy on the football side. So I'm not at the stage, Liam, where I'm really panicking. I've got to say I've not been happy with the form, but I don't think it's simply because we've changed the manager. I think there was a lot of signs already there. Now, there was a message that Lawrence was speaking about there in relation to replacing a first-team player with the same standard of player. And what I mentioned yesterday is, having lost Jota, we brought in Yang and Tillio. We can't judge Tillio for obvious reasons. Everything I've seen so far from Yang has been good. He looked like our most kind of direct kind of threat at the weekend there. He ran out of steam. I think we'll get to a point where he plays a 90 and he's a danger all the way through. We lost Starfelt. We brought in Novroski, Lagerbielk. I've not really seen anything negative about these two players so far, other than an injury that you can't legislate for. We lost Moy. We brought in Home and Kwon. That's an area that I don't think we have sufficiently replaced like for like yet. So when you're looking at how we replace quality, I guess the question is, are we replacing it sufficiently? Because previous to those 2-3 was Juranovic and Giakoumakis. Well, Juranovic was replaced by Johnston. So I would say, yeah, we have. We have definitely sufficiently replaced him. Giakoumakis was in effect replaced by O, even though both they two players were in the building before the other ones left. O has had a bit of a stop-start. He's certainly not made the same kind of impact that Giakoumakis would. There's been a few games this season, Liam, that I'd have loved a Giakoumakis on the bench. But this is where we are. Are we replacing quality sufficiently? So we're bringing players to the club. We're doing what we do in terms of developing them. We're moving them on. We're making a profit other than Moy because it was through injury. But are we replacing them with sufficiently quality players of a standard that can come right in it and make an impact to the first team?
Well, I think another issue we have to consider is that, you know, you look at the example of Alistair Johnson, people say, oh, yeah, he came straight in and, you know, Juranovic basically wasn't missed because we had someone who was as good, if not better, in Johnson, who went straight into the team. But remember, mid-season, coming off the back of what was individually a very good World Cup for him, if not for Canada. And I think that is where it's different, because a player like Yang, who I think has the potential to be as good as Jota, I'm gonna go out and say that now. I think he could be, in the fullness of time, the replacement for Jota. Difference is he came in after Jota was already away. I think we were probably looking at signing Yang while Ange was still the manager, because we thought Abada might have been at the door. But as it turns out, Jota left and Abada stayed, and we ended up with Yang anyway. So I think you have to bear that in mind, that he is perhaps fulfilling a role now that was not originally envisioned for him when he was initially scouted. And that is where, you know, the signings we make in the next few days are going to be more important. And they're going to go a long way to telling us how much of this is about the period of adjustment, how much of it is about a rebuild, and we have to ask the question, how much of it is about the manager not getting it right? You know, that is the question that will be asked if we do not get a good result at the weekend, even though, as Kevin says, it's not going to decide anything. There is nothing worse than having to go to your work on Monday morning when you've lost to that mob. Thank God I live in Japan, so it's not going to be a problem.
Mate. You know what I mean?
See, the thing with the point that Kev makes is, I just always see it, Kevin, as momentum. It's a momentum swing. Yeah, in essence, the 3 points, any 3 points you drop at this stage of the season can be clawed back in the league. The frustration is obviously when you lose a cup game and that's you out and the treble's gone. And I get that. You can claw a sticky patch in the season back throughout the season. And, you know, many, many times, if you look at the great Man United sides that Alex Ferguson built, they were slow starters in the league campaign, you know, but as the season progressed, they went on to a run and they got this momentum. I guess my concern is, Kevin, right, if you remove Celtic and Rangers out of the equation at the moment, we were talking at the beginning of the season about, Other teams who need to get their own act together, like Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, they were the 3 teams that we mentioned. And already, and I suggested on the first Wonder Round Paradise that, I mentioned Rangers, Hearts, Hibs and Aberdeen, and how many of them would still have the same gaffer in place by the end of the campaign. We're 3 games in and Hibs have already sacked their gaffer. So I'm not seeing anything outside the Celtic Rangers games, Kev, whereby unless you're going to really mess up, and I guess Saturday was one of those occasions, you're not going to drop many other points, Kev, throughout the season. So I do see it as a big game, and I also see it as a big game in terms of where we are sitting now, the reaction over the last couple of weeks, trying to get right in a situation where people are right behind Brendan again, because we might pull something out the bag, like Liam suggested. So I do see it as a massive game, because I actually think that other than a couple of results here and there, the derbies are really going to be pivotal to where the league title goes.
They are going to be pivotal. They're always going to be pivotal, just because of the depth of both teams' squads. If you look over historically over the last couple of seasons, we haven't dropped many points. So of course they're going to be pivotal. But remember, Mr. Postecoglou lost his first one with Ryan Christie and Edward playing. And within 24 hours, they were both outside the door. As I say, it's not a worry for me, but I remember that game, the big, we got beat 1-0, lost a goal for a set play in about 78 minutes. But I saw enough that day for Postecoglou's Celtic to say they've kind of bought into this guy. They kind of understand what he's trying to do. The last 180 minutes, I haven't seen that for this Celtic team. But a wee trip to Snake Mountain might actually change that. They might actually be on board this week. They might buy into it. They might get a bit of confidence actually going there. Look, we could lose this game quite easily. We could lose this game. We could quite easily win this game. Even if we win this game, it's not going to mean that the league's done and dusted. It's just mean that we've got away with it. You're talking about momentum as well. You've got an international break straight after it. If we lose this game, that international break's going to be safe. No wise about it.
It will be. It will be.
It will be, sir. If we won that game, we would have won the game. We would have won a game on the Wednesday. We would have won a game on the Saturday. Keep up the momentum. I remember when we got Gerrard's team beat us 2-1 at Celtic Park just after Christmas. Then we went straight into the winter break after it, and they were all hyper. And I remember walking out the stadium that day, and saying to my friend Davey, going like, I says, they've got us now. I mean, he says, you've had the League Cup final, then 2 weeks later, they've absolutely destroyed us here at Parkhead 2-1. I says, they've got us now. 3 weeks later, when they came back, they dropped points right away, and bang, we turned in a fabulous performance at McDermott Park and won 4-0, and basically walked away with the league at that point. So the fact that there is a break can work against you. The fact there is a break can actually work for you when you're talking about momentum. It's quite funny. You would have got short odds on Lee Johnson to be the first manager sacked. You would have got short odds on that, and hopefully he's paid his Giacomo account off before he got past the sign on.
Before he was emptied, if Celtic were in a slightly more comfortable situation at the moment, Kev, we probably would have spoken about Lenny and Bruni having been ex-Celtic. At this moment in time, I don't care who they appoint. I'm just concentrating on Celtic. I've seen a wee wry grin. Sorry, Kev.
What I will actually say though, Paul, something that Charlie Mulgrew says on Friday night, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
He did say that. And he's got a beautiful finish on his locks, isn't he? He was asked a number of times what he put on that head of hair of his, and I know the secret. He actually divulged what he puts on the fosh. But anyway, I'll keep it to myself because it is really impressive installation. Honestly.
Me and Liam could do with some.
Yes.
No, I'm quite happy with the Mr. Sheen. I'm good.
Listen, Liam, I seen a wee wry grin coming across your face there when Kevin Graham quite rightly called it Snake Mountain. You know the 80s reference, and he got it right. Lawrence, I'm going to come to you. Kevin Graham mentioned a buy-in, right? I think that's important you mentioned it there, Kev, with regards to getting a buy-in from this squad, who largely was assembled by Ange Postecoglou. Marco Tilio even spoke about being in discussions with Celtic 2 years previous to signing for the club. Rodgers has had really nothing to do with the negotiations and all that kind of stuff. So you've got a group of players there who largely bought into Ange Postecoglou and his model and his approach. And with regards to the buy-in, I find it quite stark how that's changed, because the first thing we're hearing is Brendan Rodgers is actually taking counsel from Callum McGregor before deciding whether or not to take the job. So you're thinking to yourself, you've got the buy-in for the captain before you've even taken it. Then you're hearing comments coming out. It was a conversation point for a couple of weeks. Comments from Matt O'Reilly talking about how much different it is. And he was doing it in a positive way, Lawrence, as if he's bought into this new approach by Brendan Rodgers. And, as Celtic fans, and we're listening to every interview, we're reading all the information that we can possibly get on this situation, all of a sudden it's as if some people are not buying into it. It doesn't help, obviously, when you're putting out less than vague comments on Instagram, obviously, after a game. But is it an issue for you, Lawrence? Is there a buy-in issue in terms of a squad assembled by another gaffer buying in to a new approach by Brendan Rodgers? I would be astonished if there was an issue with that, because Brendan Rodgers has an approach which is not as though he's coming in and tearing up the rule book and telling them to play a completely different game. It is possession-based. Yeah, it's not as much in terms of the tempo. No, we're not playing out from the back as much as we did, certainly from the goalkeeper. We've maybe tinkered with the wingers. We've maybe tinkered with the full-backs. But these are quality footballers playing a game of football. And surely there's certain things in that game of football where you can work it out for yourself as well. I mean, what are you thinking about this buy-in? Is there a lack of buy-in from this squad?
Well, you've kind of said that they're quality footballers. Brendan's come out and said he needs more quality, or there's a lack of quality. Maybe say that,
Has he said there's a lack of quality? Has he said that?
Yeah. Well, we need more quality in the team. If we need more
quality.
Yeah.
You need more quality.
The required amount of quality then, isn't it? If you require more quality,
he's not said there's a lack of quality. Yeah, how can you say there's a lack of quality in a treble-winning side, though, Lawrence?
More quality on the pitch.
More quality.
I think that he's been going on about, aye.
So, I don't know, Haksabanovic, and Bernabei on social media. Jeez, I don't know if they think they should be in the starting 11, seriously, on the performances.
Does anybody on here? Yeah. Lawrence, do you think they should be, they two players? Haksabanovic, he looks technically good. He looks a decent footballer. Ange wasn't too sure where to play him. Bernabei hardly gets a sniff under Ange, even though he bought him. The guys have had chances and they've not made the jersey their own. No. So, if they think they're hitting it, where the quality should be starting, the performances aren't showing it. So, I'm not too sure what those two are all about. And talking about buy-in, you had guys like Giakoumakis and Juranovic, towards the end, perhaps weren't buying in. They're definitely looking for a move out, and Ange moved them out quickly. Because they weren't fully committed. Yeah, even though that was a sin, Ange was allowed not to be fully committed to Celtic towards the end, wasn't it? He was quite happy to do transfer negotiations for another club or speak to players about joining another club when it was Celtic manager. Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous, in any walk of life to do that. Yeah. But, Brendan Rodgers is well-respected managers. There's players that will buy in, and there's going to be players that are unhappy if he's giving them a message like going, I don't rate you. You're not doing enough. Some players will respond positively to that, and others will take to social media, telling you how good they are. Unfortunately, they're not showing at the football park.
How do you manage them, Lawrence? How do you manage? Let's take they two, because I know there was others that liked the post, right? And in this world of Instagram and social media, a simple wee like can really put you in a bad light. Right, let's focus on the guy that put the post out, right? Because I know Bernabei and Rocco Vata liked it and all that, but the guy that put the post out, what do you do with him? Because he's obviously been in your plans. He's been part of the action at the weekend. There's nearly a few days to go before the end of the transfer window. He's changing your plans potentially by doing that, isn't he?
Well, I imagine Brendan's holding him into his office and asked him exactly what he thinks he's playing at. He needs to get a ball with it and tell him, this is completely unacceptable, and if Haksabanovic doesn't get on board, tell your agent to find you a new club. I think it's
And then
that simple. I don't think it'd be a huge loss to us. He's certainly not been a huge bonus in the time he's been here.
No. How many starts? 12 starts, something like that, over that period of time. It's not a great return, is it? It's not a great
Bernabei
return.
spent, 4.3 million or something on? Huge outlay on him. He's not covered himself in glory either, has he? So it's another player you're looking at and going, if we're paying that kind of money, he should be in the starting 11. He should be at least challenging Greg Taylor. I don't think he's given him a challenge for that jersey at all.
I think he was brought in to do that a year ago, and we're still asking for somebody to do it, Lawrence, which tells its own story. I'm going to ask you, though, about mutiny in the camp, right? So go back. We didn't really hear so much about this back in the day. I'm sure it happened. I know for a fact that I've asked the question, Liam, about, John Barnes losing the dressing room. And I don't know if you were at the show that we did this, Kevin. I asked Jackie Mack, when did John Barnes lose the dressing room? He said in the pre-season, in the summer. And he lost it with a number of different things that he did. And he lost the trust and the belief in some senior pros in that dressing room who have got a massive influence and a huge amount of the squad that are playing under Barnes. And there was no coming back from it. I then think back to the Ronnie Dyla times where, some of the senior pros didn't buy into his methods. And it was pretty clear that they didn't. And it kind of culminated in that scene over in Mold, remember, in the Europa League games where you've got Chris Commons coming off and throwing volleys of abuse, which you had to thereafter apologise for. And then you've got Neil Lennon coming out after the Ferencváros defeat, the Champions League, saying there's guys in that dressing room don't want to be here. It's a horrible, horrible situation to be in for a Celtic fan, thinking there's a group of players in that dressing room don't want to play for the football club. They're disrespecting the gaffer, their teammates, us as fans. Are we there yet? Is that where we are just now, Liam?
No, we're not. But, that's what the media will tell you, Brian. What I think you have instead is the period of adjustment, and you're going to get, as always, in any form of work, when a new gaffer comes in, whether it's a football club or a company or whatever, there's going to be certain people who think this guy's an Egypt, right? Doesn't matter what he's done before. Sometimes you just don't like the guy, right? And I think, that can also go the other way with the manager. He can see certain players and just think, nah, he's not for me. And Brendan Rodgers strikes me as the type who's not going to hold that back. He's going to come out and say that to players if they're not impressing him, in the hopes that they might raise their game. Now, when you're told, again, in any job, when you're given a performance evaluation, if you want to use the HR term, that's below acceptable standards, you've got two options. Either you can work to deal with whatever the problem is, or you can throw the toys at the pram and go and look for another job, which seems to be what Haksabanovic has gone for.
Yeah, and I just don't see there being a return for him. And Bernabei's been kind of he's dragged himself into it, Kev, by liking the Instagram post. And with regards to Bernabei, you look at what he's done since he came to Celtic, and there's been quite a few blips now, isn't there? I think I can count 3 blips in his Celtic career. Is that a position? Let's get on to positions, because I'll tell you what, with each passing day and no signings, we're going to have a very busy last few days or hours in this transfer window. Kev, you're not confident we're going to get the 4 or 5 in, or are you sitting there thinking, you know what, some of these deals are lined up, it's going to happen?
You see how long it's took us to get the Honduran winger over the line, and that was first muted about 7 days ago. Now, what's going to happen now? We're now looking at the loan market more than likely. We're now looking at players who are going to get jettisoned from English academies, and they're looking to actually come on loan up to Scotland. That's the market we're probably looking at. That's the deals that we're probably looking at, because we never do anything quick. We've had 73 days since Brendan Rodgers walked in that door, and now it seems like the panic button is now getting pressed, or it could just be that the guys, or it could just be that the boys that we want to sign are hanging on and going, well, we'll see if something better comes along, because that's maybe the step up that we actually need. Do I believe we'll sign 4 or 5 players by Thursday night? Is it Thursday night? No. I think it'll be the winger and somebody else, somebody on loan. That'll be it.
Right.
And we'll need
Okay.
to actually go what we've actually got. I'll find it most amusing, because sometimes these things find it most amusing, the amount of blogs that I've already read absolutely slaughtering Peter Lawwell. These things must have actually been saved in their drafts for months and years since well, he never actually left anyway. So these things are probably, and I think the meltdown will be quite funny. I will find, because some folk will severely lose their poo over it. But aye,
They'll lose their mind over it, Kev.
It's just typical Celtic, eh? We never do nothing. We never do. I mean, you get a manager who's got a better record than the manager that just left, right? But the manager that's just left made that team believe, and now the team are no longer believing that what that previous manager told them, and we're in a state of flux at this precise moment in time. And we haven't got games, and I wonder if this is a hindrance as well. The fact is, we've got a week in between the games, that we haven't got time to process it. And this is why an interesting point. This is why Rangers are probably a bit further down the road with us in their transformation into hopefully a rubbish football team. Is the fact is they've played more competitive games. They've actually had to go through qualifying rounds, and we're just sort of messed about and went to Japan, travelled about the place and all of that, and we're trying to sort things in real time. And if we would have got a fair face in Europe, maybe it wouldn't have done it like domestically, but that's maybe just blethering, eh? But it is worrying, but I didn't believe that there's going to be 5 wandering through the door. I didn't believe there's 4 going to be wandering through the door. I didn't believe there's 3 going to be wandering through the door.
You think there's going to be 2? But
the thing could be Scott McKenna.
Well,
I'm preparing myself for Scott McKenna.
Prepare yourself for someone at centre half who may not even be a permanent deal. We're going back to something Lawrence said last week. Lawrence, you pitched the idea of us dipping into the free transfer market. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me now if the centre half was a loan deal, certainly. But in terms of this being typical Celtic, for a couple of years it wasn't. You know, we were getting our business done early. We had players in the door before the transfer window opened under Ange Postecoglou, and the system under which we are operating, if you forget for a moment that Peter Lawwell shouldn't be part of that system, hasn't changed, Lawrence. You know, the recruitment side of it, that whole side of it shouldn't have changed.
Can I just jump in there before you go to Lawrence with that? The reason that we got people in before all these transfer windows was because their seasons were still ongoing. And every player that we've spoke to, from the South Koreans and the Japanese, I've said we started speaking to them months before. Months before that window opened. So it's not as if that we managed to get the deal done quick. It was done over a long period of time. Anything that we've got lined up would have been lined up 4 or 5 weeks ago. We've got nothing lined up. We've got absolutely hee-haw lined up.
But I think the point is the timing was better, wasn't it? The deals, you know how long it take, but the timing undoubtedly was better, and we seem to have got that timing off. But listen, a lot is to do with the injury crisis. Nobody be really saying, "Listen, we need an emergency centre half in." You know, we've only got 2 fit centre halves. One's just started. We're not too sure what he's like, and the other one's Liam Scales, and it's not acceptable to only have 2 fit centre halves there, is it? You know, we thought Welsh was on his way out. Brendan decides to keep him. Then he picks up an injury.
I know.
You know, there is an injury crisis going on, and we do need to be able to react a bit more agile to it. And that's why I was saying, like, free transfer market, these should be quicker deals for us. And, you know, invest some money. It's short term. Maybe we're not going to get a return in signing a 32-year-old. But you know what? Right now, we just need a decent team in the park.
Yeah, you're right. I totally get that, Lawrence. You know, and I don't like short-termism. That was the contradiction last week. I don't like it, but we're forced it back into a corner at the moment because of the injury crisis. Stephen Slow, welcome to the show. What's your thoughts? I relied on you very heavily yesterday, and maybe we should do it more often because it was great to get loads of comments up on the screen. Obviously, once me, Kevin, Lawrence and Liam get going, we might take a few diversions along the way. We have a squad size at the moment of 33 players. That is insane. Yeah, even if we buy 4 or 5 players this week and get rid of 4 or 5, we're still left with a huge squad. You absolutely will be left with a huge squad. And we're hearing, Liam, about guys like Soro and Ayeti, still in the building. I thought Soro was off ski, but obviously whatever the deal was for the League 2 French team that he was in discussions with has broken down. There's now talk of him going to Israel. There's talk of Ayeti going back to Switzerland, I think. So there's moves in the works, but these are guys, I mean, those two in particular, 7 million quid. And I think that sometimes if you don't have your recruitment policy running smoothly, and it seems for some strange reason we don't at the moment, you may end up buying guys that don't fit the system, that aren't ideal for what you're looking for, and you've got to write them off. That's 7 million quid we've already written off Barkas at 5 million quid. And I'm sure there's a few others in the building as well. We'll get to predicted teams for the weekend. But in terms of squad size, Liam, it would appear that there is quite a few moving parts to this. We do need to get a lot of these boys at the building as well. James McCarthy being another one.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. 33 is a crazy number of players especially for a team like Celtic, who at European level, at least, we do have to operate within a limit, a constricted budget. But the counterpoint to that is, as we've just said, of those 33 players, maybe 22, 23, maybe maximum 25 of them are actual serious competitors for a place in the team. And you could probably chop that down even further if you knew which players the manager fancies and which ones he doesn't. I reckon that, all right, you've got 33 men on the books. You probably only got about 20 of them that are actually going to play a major part this season. So it's about cutting out those ones that are not going to make the grade. And, like you say, Soro, Ayeti, McCarthy, these guys all need to be moved out. And you know what? If it means giving them free transfers at this point, you just got to say, well, so be it. Of course, as employees, they have the right to say, no, I'll just sit back and take my X number of grand a week. Thank you very much. And that's Celtic's fault for giving them the long-term deals. But no, the squad size is ridiculous, but we need to put that in the perspective of how many of that squad are actually competitive first-team squad members. And I think it's only maybe about 2/3 of them.
Yeah, and I think the figures that Brendan has used this season is having a core squad of 17, a kind of a long list of 25, Liam, and as you say, everybody else is kind of on the periphery, which is fine, I think, if the rest of the guys are actually playing B-team football. But the 33-man squad that Stephen Sloan mentions there, unfortunately, doesn't really include the guys that are playing in the B-team. Jungle Lion, no white smoke from the Vatican Celtic transfer window yet. And there really is that moment, Kev, you say there's going to be a lot of disappointed bloggers out there who are going to be furiously writing up their pieces afterwards, blaming probably Peter Lawwell for this. But I don't know what it is this week. I'm being positive this week, Kev. Yesterday was speaking positively about Brendan Rodgers turning this round. I'm also thinking we will strengthen well this week. But here you go. Here's my list, right? And the list has actually had a centre-back thrown on top of it. And I've said kind of like from the earliest days this season, we need a goalie. I don't know if we'll bring one in if we can't move on Siegrist. I don't know if we will. Why would we run before? I see some of these, periphery, these fringe players actually blocking a new signing. Left back, I think we absolutely need to bring in a left back. I thought Greg Taylor played his best game of the season at the weekend against St Johnstone in an otherwise poor display for the team. I thought that was the best game he's played individually. But Bernabei, for me, I've written him off now. It's just one too many indiscretions for me. And, that's before you get to the playing side of it. Left wing, I see Maeda switching to the right and for the first time ever hitting the Green Brigade with a shot with his left foot. Kevin, did you find that amusing as well, Kev? As well as the Ralston bit, right? And
that's when the guy behind me actually says he's just the Japanese Ollie Burke, and I went,
don't bring Ollie Burke into it.
I quite like
Ollie
that.
Burke, the most expensive footballer ever. to come out of Scotland, and he was born in Kirkcaldy. So I'm now looking at that, and I can't just base it on one performance, right? Maeda's been brilliant for us over a 2-year period, Kev. But what I've seen from Yang at the weekend was a guy who was very direct. He's probably the only player in the team now who wants to take a player on, actually, because that's not Abada's forte. It certainly isn't Maeda's forte. They two guys tend to rely on their pace to get past players. This boy likes a trick. He likes to dribble. He likes getting round the back of players in that respect. So at this moment in time, we'll get to our predicted 11s. Yang's my left winger, and I'm not sure if I would play Maeda because his form's not been great. I'm going to come back to Liam, who loves the guy. His form's not been great, and I'm not happy with this whole watching Spurs. Let it go, son. You're playing for Celtic. I'm not interested if you watch Angie's team. So,
I'm glad that way of thinking, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm a convert. Left wing is a position for me that, you know what, Yang might stop us from actually buying another left winger because I think he's made a really good impact. Central midfield, I still think there's a problem area in there, particularly now that Hatate's out injured, whereby I'm still playing McGregor and O'Reilly at the moment every week, even though McGregor's not playing to his usual high standard. But there's something missing in midfield, which I don't think Turnbull gives us. Centre forward, in a perfect scenario, we would have another centre forward. We're basically running with Kyogo, albeit with a few others who can fill in there. And now the priorities are centre back. If you were to fill all them in, Kev, that's 6 players this week. I know that's not going to happen. Where is your priorities, Kev? From the list I've given, or do you think somewhere else needs strengthened?
Here's the priorities, right? A goalie should have been the priority, but it's no a priority this late in the window because, as you rightly say, we've got 3. We can't bring in a 4th. It's not going to happen unless Siegrist goes to Australia, which he wants to do. Left back, probably something that I would look at because I do agree with you about Bernabe, just for his haircut alone. And same with Haskabanovic with his Neymar style gimp hair as well. Nah, just go, mate. I thought Haskabanovic's career was going to start on Saturday. I says, go, come on, sit in the number 10. He is a 1-0 victory, and we can actually say this boy's like a new signing. Let's use the old cliche. This guy's like a new signing, but he just came on and messed about and got in James Forrest's way. That's where we are. We were bringing on James Forrest to win a game. On Saturday, and that's no slight on James Forrest whatsoever, but that's where we were. That's where we were on Saturday. I don't think we'll bring in another winger. I think you've got Tilio there. You've got this Honduran guy Palma coming in, and you've got Yang. They 3 look like Rodgers type wingers. When you actually see, what I've seen of Yang in the flesh, and what I've seen in other 2 on YouTube, they look like more Rodgers type wingers who want to take guys on, who have got really, really good close control, who can actually make things happen. In the midfield, and I would still say this if Postecoglou was there, and this is the kind of thing that I've said for a wee while, we miss that big, utter B of a defensive midfielder. We do miss a strong physical presence in the middle of that park. And I think that's where I would be looking at. But then again, the names that we are getting linked with are we guys from Man City. And you go, no, we need a big physical. We need a big physical guy in the middle of the park to let Callum go forward a wee bit. And Rodgers needs to go back to the 4-2-3-1. He needs to go back to the 4-2-3-1 because the way that he wants us to play, that 4-3-3 is not working for us. But my thing would be left back, centre, midfield. That would be my 2. And also, if you can get a centre half that's willing to come in on a short-term deal, because no centre half worth their salt is going to come in knowing that they're going to get bombed out as soon as
a plethora of centre halves come back. Yeah, absolutely.
Aye.
Within 2 months, Kev, you're up against another 5 centre halves. When I'll come back to you in a wee second, Lawrence, but when we mentioned the left winger, I very quickly want to jump over to you, Liam, because it's a position that obviously we have actively been pursuing a number of players this season. We've managed to bring in Yang, who I thought played really well on the left. Luis Palma's the next in line, obviously, once that gets over the line. And you've got Maeda and also Tilio, who can play on the left. So you're now looking at a position where there's plenty of bodies in. where does it leave Maeda? Maeda was a first pick for virtually 2 years. He's someone who, he probably suffered by getting switched at the weekend, but he hasn't been on his best form. You know the guy really well as a player. Is he going to be part of Rodgers' plans? Is he the type of winger Rodgers can utilise, or is one of the new guys going to be the first pick?
I think that Maeda may well drop to the bench on Sunday, because I think you start with Yang on the left and Abada on the right. That's how, if you're going to play two wingers, that's how I would do it. But Maeda's greatest quality as a footballer throughout his entire career, which I've followed since the boy was 20 years old and playing for Matsumoto Yamaga, his adaptability is his biggest strength. Mm-hmm. If the manager tells him, I want you to do this, he'll do it. If he says to him, I want you to play left back, give Maeda 6 weeks to get his head together and he'll do it. That's the type of player that he is. I'm not suggesting that we should play him in defence, but what I'm saying is that he will. It's a general Japanese footballer philosophy, but Maeda is perhaps the best embodiment of it at the moment. That you play whatever the team needs you to play. Now, all right, yes, I could probably hit a better shot than that one he hit at the weekend, right? But that's the effort that he's putting in. He's trying to play in a position that's not familiar to him, because that's what the manager asked him to do. And he needs time to get that right. But unfortunately, we've got a derby game on Sunday, which means we don't have time to wait for him to adapt. So I think over the fullness of the season, we'll see Maeda being as effective as he was last season in the fullness of time. But I do think on Sunday, I agree with you. Yang was the best player on the park for me at the weekend. Alistair Johnson being a close second. So I think they are two definite starters for me the weekend. And I think, Abada has been up and down form-wise, but he loves a goal against them. Mm-hmm. So I think you put him in there. Front three, Yang, Kyogo, and Abada. I reckon that's... Whatever our defence is, as long as we've got that front three, there's every chance we'll score more goals than they do. So...
Well, for 2 years a year and a half, you've been speaking about Maeda. You do have that knowledge of his Japanese career pre-Celtic, Liam, and always lean on you for that. I never thought I'd see the day where people are telling you, no, Maeda needs to play, and you're saying, no, I'm benching him. So, Sugarman, a confident Maeda must play at the weekend, and Mahesh Raja, Maeda has to start to stop Goldson and Tav.
That's a valid point.
But again, last season, I think going into a game against Rangers, it would have been unthinkable not to play Maeda. But, when you look at players coming into form, Yang, I think, like yourself, was one of the best players at the weekend. But if we move on to where else we need to strengthen, just before I go back to Lawrence, Liam, where do you think? So Kevin Graham reckons left back, centre mid, and a centre back.
Centre back, absolutely. Left back, yes. Because I think that Taylor's form has dipped recently, not just because the team aren't playing well, but also because he doesn't have a challenge. I mean, think about how much better a player Tony Ralston became once Juranovic and then later Johnson entered the building, right? Having an excellent player alongside you competing for that place will drive you on. And I think Yang has embodied that, because he's seen that we've got some really good wingers at the club already, and he's come in and said, I'm going to show you what I can do. Left back, centre back, absolutely. I think if it is going to be a short-term loan deal, we might have to look at... Now, I mentioned last week the idea of Sergio Ramos. I don't think that would happen, but someone of that sort of mould, an older player who isn't necessarily going to be too upset if he finds out his career's over at the end of the season. Someone who come Christmas time says, okay, thanks for that, Celtic. I'll head off to Saudi, or I'll head off to America now and have my final payday. Somebody like that. Yep. Not necessarily a great thing for continuity, but needs must at the moment. Midfield, I'm starting to think that Tomoki Iwata is the new Derek Riordan. Like, it's that all an excuse sketch. You're going to have Pete the One-Eyed Whistle player, the Jakey, and then Tomoki Iwata, and Brendan sends on the Jakey. You know, I think that's where we're going, and I really don't understand why. Because to me, he's got the physicality that Kev says we need.
Kev's mentioned, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, a defensive midfielder, him and McGregor alongside each other as the two, as Kev says, if we revert to the 4-2-3-1, then to me that is tailor-made for Iwata and McGregor. Because the one thing about Iwata as well, something that I think he's actually better than McGregor at, is threading the ball from deep and picking out a pass. Hatate and Iwata, in my opinion, are two of the best passers of a ball at Celtic at the moment. And that is something that could really help us at the weekend, especially as the commenter said, you know, Maeda keeps the pressure on their defence, Tavernier and Goldson, because they don't have the same pace. Well, if we can't beat them with pace, we have to pass our way around them. Mm-hmm. And that's where, for me, there's an opening for a guy like Iwata.
You know, people will be thinking I just repeat myself all the time with Iwata because I want him to play in the midfield. I've not, over the 3 performances from David Turnbull, I've not been impressed over the piece with him. I know that he started off well against Ross County. I think Home came in, got a start, didn't really overly impress me. I was surprised he got the start against Kelly. Hatate obviously is a massive miss, but I, like yourself, Liam, have seen enough in Iwata in the midfield. You're talking about somebody who can boss it. He's maybe not got the height as such, but what were they calling him, Kevin? Because he spends all his time in the gym. It wasn't a Rhino, that was Murdo McLeod, but it was something along the bull. Were they calling him the bull? No, that's bull. David Turnbull. It was some kind of animal, right? And they were calling him that.
I think it was the tank, was it? No, but they're not calling him the tank.
We'll go with that. But yeah, I do think he's got that physicality that we seem to be missing at the moment. Lawrence, I've got 2 things to ask you now. Do you start with Iwata on Sunday? And also, where else are we strengthening this squad? It looks as though we're already bringing in another left winger.
Mate, for me, I'd definitely start Iwata, push Callum further forward. Iwata, Callum in the right lane midfield. The defence, we don't really have any options. So, and up top, Kyogo, Maeda and Yang for me. Where I'd strengthen left back, centre forward, and I'd like a decent attacking midfielder, but I'd probably forgo that and get a centre half in just because of a short-term centre half for year's contract, whatever. It's just
who are you looking at now, Lawrence? You had a few names for centre half last week. Who are you kind of looking at now?
Phil Jones, Jerome Boateng, both of them, are available and free. You're going to have to pay them a fortune on wages or a big signing on fee and keep within your wage structure. But both, I think they both end up being starters for us. Fortunately, it doesn't fit a model of developing players and selling them for a profit. But I just think the injury crisis is so bad. We're talking about 2 months before they're back playing. When are these players back match fit? Are we 3 months? Are we 3 months into a 10-month season before we've got a centre halves back match fit?
Sharp, yeah.
Listen,
Johnny Ryan.
Sunday doesn't decide the league, but the next 3 months might.
No, you're right. You're right. Goalkeeper, left back, centre forward should be the priority, says Johnny. We've also got B wondering what Tommy Rodgick's up to these days. And even at the weekend there on Friday night, Lawrence and Kevin obviously were at the gig. There was a few Celtic fans called for Charlie McGrew to get the boots on as well. Desperate times, Charlie. Great player for Celtic. Loved him to bits. Great gentleman of a man. But even he admitted that his best days are over. But when we're talking there about the defence picks itself, I'm going to pick up on that, Lawrence. That's going to be another subject that we need to talk about. The defence picks itself, right? So what's the defence then, Kev? Does that involve Liam Scales at centre half for you?
Oh, look, Scalesy completely and utterly was so nervous on Saturday. It was unbelievable. Right for the first touch of the ball, you could tell that this lad knows that he's the 6th choice centre half at Celtic and he's only getting his chance. He was told 10 days before that he was going to Aberdeen, and the next thing you can, all your centre halves get injured, and he's here trying to be the libero and trying to break down a Paxton Johnson defence, and he's about as slow as a bank holiday weekend in the jail. But Ibrox might suit him. They might go, right, I've got nothing to lose here now. No Celtic fans there, no pressure on me. I just need to defend. I just need to defend because this game will be a bit more open and I'm not going to get as much time on the ball. If he was going to play anybody else at centre half, it would have been done on Saturday. If he was going to play anybody else that was in the building at centre half, it would have been done on Saturday. So, as you see, I've actually left open a gap there in the building.
Yeah.
I say.
No, you're right. Yep.
So if you're gone with who's in the building at the moment and what happened on Saturday, then Scales is in the team just purely by default because we've got nobody else. If Scales is in that team, then we've got to revert to two sitters in front of him. And I agree with Liam. I mean, I speak about a big defensive midfielder all the time, and I've done it for a number of years. I was told Iwata was it, and I'm told Quan could be it as well. Well, stick Iwata. If you're not going to sign one, put Iwata in what is meant to be his natural position and sit him and McGregor in the front. I think Matt O'Reilly has been really good for Brendan Rodgers because Matt O'Reilly didn't really get on with Ange Postecoglou. So he has got something to prove. He's no one that was under the Church of Ange. He's been known to have says that he reckoned that Hatate got a game didn't matter if he had one leg in front of Matt O'Reilly. So Matt O'Reilly's got something to prove, and he looks like, for me, you're talking about Tom Rogic. I was having a look at O'Reilly. No, I remember O'Reilly's first game at Tynecastle when he was a really, really creative player, and that seemed to disappear over the months. I saw a bit of that back on Saturday, and well, he needs to learn how to shoot for 6 years, right enough. But I can see there was only two players on that. There were three players. It looked like a Brendan Rodgers player on that pitch on Saturday. Johnson, O'Reilly, and Yang. All the rest of them looked like they had been beamed in for Marsh and didn't have a clue what they were actually meant to be doing. So O'Reilly gets that number 10 spot. Yang, Abada, Kyogo. In the back four, the back four has to be Taylor, Johnson, Scales, and Lagershande and Joe Hart.
Right. Now, I've got one concern about this, Kev. Right, you said all Scales needs to do is defend. He was asked to defend twice at the weekend, and he failed.
I know I got bullied off the ball. I know, but
he failed on 2 occasions. And by the way, the guys that bullied him off the ball are 19 and 20-year-old loanees, Costello and Taylor Cook. And I just look at Scales, I think to myself, see when he's got the ball at his feet, right, and he's on the front foot, looks quite elegant, looks quite confident, can pick out a pass. He's going to be asked to defend. That's my concern. Because if he's going to be asked to defend, I don't think he's very good at that side of the game. I'm going to bring up a few of these comments, right? Bailey Gregg, Bernabe getting hate as usual, not from us. My issue with Bernabe is he's been given an opportunity coming over from Argentina.
It'll be my haircut comment that he's on about.
Maybe that was a bit harsh, Kev. I know that we were in
sarcasm, they can't take.
We were in the presence of one of the best hairdos in the history of Celtic Football Club on Friday, so obviously nothing's going to be up to that standard. But my issue with Bernabe is you come to the football club. I remember the time against Dundee United where he's handballed the ball, right, and he's not even been looking in the same direction. The ball was ricocheted off a flailing arm behind him, and he gave away a penalty. That was a shocking decision against them, right? But Bernabe, for the rest of that game, was so out of it in terms of his game management. His mind was off the game. He was hooked at half-time, if you remember. He wasn't able to compose himself after that disruption, obviously, early in the game. And at that point, I thought to myself, right, he's young. He'll be able to get into the swing of this. This is playing for Celtic. If you have a bad challenge, a booking, you score an own goal, you give the ball away, you need to compose yourself straight away at this level. And he wasn't able to do it. We then saw the incident, obviously, with drink driving, which has come up to court and everything else, which is a discipline issue. We've then seen sleeping in when he's in the hotel of the team that he's playing for and not being able to make a meeting. That's indiscipline. And then you bring in his performances. And I've not seen enough in his competitive performances to suggest that he's good enough for Celtic. And then all this nonsense about liking Haksabanović's Instagram post. It's not hate. If you line up all those facts, it equals Bernabe leaving the club for me. So I think we need to bring in a better left back. Now, Tony Cassidy, is Tilio any good? Like everybody else, all I can do is have a look at what's happened online, YouTube, showreels, etc. So I will take the word of Jared Hill from Celtic Down Under, which is obviously Liam's full-time gig on the Celtic platforms, and he thinks he's a very good player, and he thinks he's as effective on the left as he is on the right. So I'm going to take Jared's kind of intimate knowledge of Australian football over any showreels or anything like that. David Cooper, Murdo wasn't big, but he bossed the midfield always, didn't he? Didn't he just the Rhino, Murdo McLeod? It's great to see him back on his feet as well. So yeah, loads of discussion points today. I'm going to probably not see you on Acsom before now and the weekend, Lawrence, Kevin and Liam. So I'm going to ask you for your predictions at the weekend, and I want you to be bold. I'm going to start with you, Lawrence Conley. Predictions for the first Glasgow Derby of the season.
I reckon we'll get 3 new players in and we'll win 3-1.
I love the confidence. 3-1, 3 new players. And is there going to be someone on the day who will arrive, if you know what I mean? Someone who we're maybe got doubts about, who's going to give us a performance, Lawrence, that's going to change all our minds?
I reckon for this, that'll change our minds. No, but I think Iwata will play and he'll live up to what we believe he's capable of.
Nice. I like it. Kevin Graham, same to yourself.
I'll bite your left kneecap off for a draw the new, and
that's my good one.
Is that your good one?
I thought it was your left foot you put that free kick in with.
It was, but my right leg's for standing on.
But it's a kneecap I'm going for. And Liam Scales.
Liam Scales is going to be the standout. He's going to make us eat our words. I like that.
I've been to Ibrox with Mark McNally and Mike Galloway as the 2 centre halves, and we've came out all right. So I'm always holding out hope.
Matt, remember Barry Smith played right back in that game where all the fans were barred and we had the Hail Hail the Celts are here on the big banner. Barry Smith was playing right back that day. They had guys like, Mikhail Lachenko and everything playing. Liam Carrigan, what's your predictions?
Right, we're going to get 4 players in by the deadline.
Like it.
Iwata starts. About 10 minutes into the game, he will get a yellow card for a crunching tackle on Cantwell, who will then disappear for the rest of the game, and we will win 2-0.
Confidence. I love it. Right, thank you everybody for getting involved.
What's that?
Do you think they're going to miss their penalty?
The thing is, you have to be in our penalty area to actually get a chance of pretending you need a penalty. So I think
we'll give it extra ideas, mate.
Yeah.
See, as long as this week, there we go. The longer this week goes on, I can see the confidence filtering into the discussion here. Will McMillan Maeda will get a double. There will be heroes.
We're still top of the league. For all the Scottish press is slating us and it's disaster, and we're still sitting at the top of the league.
We are. And hopefully after the game on Sunday, we still will be at the summit. Thanks to the 1,500 or so that joined us on the live stream. The support is really quite astonishing. If you want to give us a wee vote, we're up for a few awards. There is a voting link underneath this video. We have won a few in the past. It's always a good night out, Lawrence, to go on the road down to the likes of Manchester, London and Liverpool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be Liverpool this year. I'm looking forward to it, mate. It'll be another cracking night. Hopefully we can pick up a couple of awards. You never know. Hopefully the viewers voting numbers. It'd be great.
Yep, they can definitely help us out. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Thank you to Lawrence, Kevin and Liam for joining me on a Celtic